Hey friend, my name is Bryce Henson, CEO of Fit Body Bootcamp and one of your co-hosts here at the Fit Body Inside Look. Now this show is for our franchise partners and for those who are interested in joining our brand, where we execute meaningful interviews with our franchise partners, internal HQ team, coaches and clients to be able to provide you more insight and to get more acquainted with our brand and also to showcase the business opportunity available. Thanks so much and enjoy the episode. Hey friends, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Fit Body Inside Look. So excited to introduce and showcase a new episode that I just shot with my dear friends Toni and Fred Lacey here at Detroit, Michigan, which we're hosting our elite training, and pull them away from the training so they can showcase a little bit about their experience as owners within the Fit Body brand, which they launched over a decade ago in 2014, owners of Fort Worth Fit Body Bootcamp. They migrated legally to the States from Canada, so they have an extremely inspirational journey of overcoming adversity. Toni has MS, battling that, and through all this have created an incredible world-class community in Fort Worth that have repped our brand so incredible. In fact, they are known to have the good vibe tribe, lots of good vibes and energy from the location. So very excited for you to see this episode and learn a little bit about Toni and Fred and their story. So get ready for an awesome show. Hey friends, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Fit Body Inside Look, and Toni and Fred Lacey, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, so we're here live in Detroit, Michigan, because we're doing one of our two big coaches training for the year, and had the opportunity to connect with you both. You've been longtime friends. I feel like we've known each other for a solid 10 years, but your story is actually even more important, or has more longevity than that. Before we get to that, I guess, Toni, what do you do? When did you launch your location? Where is it at? Just give us the high-level overview.
So I'm the owner of Fort Worth Fit Body Bootcamp, and we launched almost 10 years ago, July 1st, 2014. Actually got the franchise email December 26, 2013. You're approved to be a franchisee. That was intense.
What's this mean?
So I'm the owner there, and my husband supports me.
Yeah, he certainly does. So I have a lot of questions, kind of dive into like your ownership and the story and all that. But before we do, we just you celebrated your 27th anniversary. So I want to actually start there, your origin story. How did this all come to be? So take it away.
So we met in 1989, a little bit ago, 35 years ago.
Where'd you guys meet?
Cutknife, Saskatchewan, Canada, in the Great North at a house party.
Yep. Housewarming party.
Housewarming party at currently my current brother-in-law, but at the time, obviously, he was not my brother-in-law. And we met there.
Fred, your brother.
Her sister.
My sister's husband. Okay. Who would have known? But I was from Cutknife, Saskatchewan. Fred was from Unity, Saskatchewan. So like two rival towns kind of back in the day. And they came to crash the Cutknife party. And I was standing there with my friend at the time. Fred and his friends walked in, and I was like, man, did you see that guy? And then Fred opens the door, and he's like, relax, ladies. And then I was so embarrassed, but we just connected that night. And, that was before cell phones. So, 89. Yep. So I was just felt like I was in love with him from first sight. And go home and was like, I wonder if I'm ever going to see this Fred. What was his last name again? Lacey, maybe? And, we had landlines back in the day, phone books. And I remember Wednesday night, that same week, I answer the phone. And he's like, hey, is this Toni? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, I've been looking all over for you. And I was like, I think you have the wrong number. But he was calling. We had relatives in the same town that their last name was Warehon and mine was Warren. And so he had been going through the phone book, calling all the people. And so lo and behold, he really was looking for me. And I was 15, and his friends came that Saturday night, and we went on a group date. So, and that was in...
Everybody hung back there, small town, Saskatchewan, everybody hung together, right? You were all one big happy family group type thing, family. Because, she graduated with like 7 people, right? So the town's not very big. And your community's small.
Absolutely. Fred, how about you from your perspective? Toni just laid that down from her perspective. What was going through your mind?
Not a whole lot back then. I had just gotten divorced, actually.
Really?
Yes. And a friend of mine said, we're going to a housewarming party up at Ken's, which is our brother-in-law now. And kind of So, okay, let's go. And then kind of just happened to glance over and and she caught my eye. And
Pretty gal.
that was it. That was it. Yeah.
Look at that.
That was it. Love at first sight.
Good on you guys. So, I would love to hear more. You just celebrated 27 years. You went to Niagara Falls. I want to lead the witness, but give us the rundown on that. I'm curious why specifically you went to Niagara.
So on our honeymoon, his family's from Ontario, Canada, and they had flown out for the wedding. And we were actually supposed to go skiing, but the dove-like wife, he had convinced me to go with his family to Ontario. So we flew there, and we did like Niagara Falls, Canada, U.S., and then we went to Buffalo, New York, where we ate at, how do you say it?
Salvatore's.
Yeah, so we ate at this Italian restaurant. His aunt and uncle had taken us there, and we always said, we're coming back here, because it was like the most amazing restaurant we had ever ate at. We were pretty sheltered, lived in a small town, and we always said we were going to come back. We finally did.
And to give perspective from Americans in the audience, so Saskatchewan is more kind of like west central Canada.
Yes.
Ontario is more kind of eastern side. So kind of like Ontario is just north of New York, where
North Dakota, Saskatchewan.
Yeah, there we go. So that's the distance in terms of what you're looking at.
Yes,
Okay.
from the prairies.
From the prairies, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, continue on.
And so we've looked at coming. We usually spend our anniversary in Mexico.
Yeah.
So this year we decided we weren't originally coming to the training, but then we decided we weren't going to Mexico. And then I said to my husband, do you want to go to Elite for our anniversary? And I said we could plan like a whole little trip and revisit all the little spots and kind of remember how it is, see if it's as good as we thought. And we could see your family at the same time because we hadn't seen them for 27 years, his sister, and And so we planned this whole little trip. We came up a week ago.
Yeah.
And it was really fun. And obviously when you're married, you don't get married young. We had no money. So this time it was really cool because we were able to go in a helicopter to see the falls, and we rode the boat right into the falls, and the restaurant was amazing. Every bit of it.
What's the highlight?
I think the falls.
The falls?
A walk through the boat island. We did a walk through on the American side. There's a little island in the middle between the American Falls and the Canadian Falls, and they call it Goat Island, but the trails come right alongside the falls, right? So we probably did 10,000 steps or something like that.
It was like 5 hours.
Yeah.
And the thing that everybody says is like the Canadian Falls are better, but it's actually the view is better from Canada, but on the American side, it's not as touristy, and you literally can feel the vibration from the falls because you're like the water's coming this close to you.
Yeah. On the American side. Mm-hmm. It is known though, Canadian side is better.
It's a better view, but it's really touristy over there, whereas the American side is not. And so you were like in a park, and I preferred the American side.
Too. Other than, I think the hype comes from when you're looking across from the Canadian side, you're seeing
It's
the
cool.
visual, right? But I think when you're standing on the American side, it's just a more natural, earthy feeling. You know what I mean? It's more connection.
Yeah.
It's like an awe because we never got that close when we came before.
Sure.
And we were just like, and when we're older now, I feel like you appreciate.
The smaller things.
We were just like, and we stayed in these hotels that were 1928 original stuff. So that was kind of fun too.
Nostalgic.
It was fun.
Cool. Well, interesting that you mentioned the American and Canadian side because Toni, Fred, I'm not sure your status, but Toni, you're both American and Canadian.
Yes.
Is that true for you, Fred, as well?
Yes.
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 Awesome. So a lot of love and respect for hardworking migrants to their country. So very grateful for you both. So actually, before we kind of jump into Fit Body, how did this all came to be? You guys are from Canada. Obviously, we gave our audience a little insight to your anniversary and all that. But what was the backstory in terms of getting over to the U.S. and how all that come to be?
I'll let Fred tell that.
Yeah.
I'm a oil field worker, working drilling oil wells, and I've worked all over
Closer.
the U.S. and Canada. Started my career in Canada. Got an opportunity to work in Venezuela. Went down there for 3 years. Didn't know a lick of Spanish.
What year is this roughly?
1999. So as you work your way up the corporate ladder type thing, I started to get more and more higher senior positions. So in 2003, we went to Mexico, and part of the Canadian company I worked for sold to Weatherford International, which is a huge oil corporation, right? So part of our senior group broke away from the original group and bought a company in the United States. And they knew I had dual citizenship, so they said, "Hey, Fred, you want to come?" I said, "Hey, yeah, okay, well, let me run it by my family." And so I go home and I said to the wife, I said, "Hey, you want to go to the States?" "Absolutely not. We're not going." Because, I mean, the distance, the people, you don't know anybody. And next thing you know, they said, "Okay, let's go." And then we packed up and moved to Texas.
So what year was that?
2007.
And did you move straight to Dallas-Fort Worth?
Weatherford, Texas.
Weatherford.
Yes.
How far is Weatherford?
It's about 20 minutes west of Fort Worth.
Okay, so that's
the
really
Metroplex.
basically,
Yes.
Yeah.
and that's what brought you from Canada to the States in
Right.
2007.
Right.
Landing in Fort Worth, kind of setting up, I guess, future vision, or at least telling you to take action on.
100%. 100%.
Well, appreciate that insight.
Yeah.
All right, so now you're, stateside, 2007, et cetera, has just fast forward. What were you both doing then, specifically, Toni? I'm curious on you, and then we can kind of lead up to, how you heard about FitBody and all that.
Well, I left a career in respiratory therapy, so I had been doing that for 12 years. And I left a really good company. It was hard to move. Once you agree to move,
In Canada.
yes. Once you agree to move, it's exciting, but then when it comes down to it, you're like, oh, what did I do? That was before Facebook even, too. It was out there, but not very many people had
Kind
it.
of like our fitness clients when New Year challenge are excited, ready to go, and the reality said,
Yes.
"Oh, wow, this is
Oh,
really
yeah.
hard."
Yeah. So it was hard, and leaving, because we were within an hour of pretty much all my family, my sisters and cousins and all of that. So we moved, we get down here. I couldn't work on the type of visa that Fred was on at that time. And so I couldn't work, and I was like, oh my God, what have I did? We've moved to Mars. I'm not even kidding. It was very difficult to immigrate. You just don't think of, because like in Canada, it's very like black and white. In Texas, like, no, there's all this in the middle. And I was like, how do you get insurance? We can't buy a house because we have 0 line of credit. Like, it was a lot. And so, that it was tough in the beginning. And, he was working all the time trying to figure out his new role as a superintendent, which he had never did. And, I decided to join a gym. I had never been a part of a gym ever. I weighed about 200 pounds when we moved.
To work out, focus on your fitness.
Yeah, so I had run in Canada, did a half marathon, but I had a stress fracture, but never worked out per se. So I joined this gym, not really knowing anything. Get on the treadmill, stayed on the treadmill for many months, got like a few friends, my treadmill friends, my 9 a.m. friends, but I was really like an introvert and really, I felt really lost because I had really had so much pride in my work and, just trying to be like the super mom and the, super wife and trying to figure out that role because interesting enough, until 2007, Fred and I had never lived together full time.
Really?
He had always worked away.
Oh, yeah.
And so we had to navigate.
Time on, time off.
Yeah.
And then Fred had to navigate, I have to find balance between work, dad, and be a husband. All of the things. So it was a really challenging year.
Well, moving to a new country.
Yeah, moving to a new country.
Maneuver.
Yeah.
And so, I joined this gym and started to meet people, but, I really realized like how unhappy I was and lonely. And so the only way I knew how to try to be happy was to be like the super wife and super mom, but got on that treadmill.
You had nothing for yourself.
Nothing, like my job had went away and I really took pride in that.
Yeah, that was like your identity.
Yeah, lots of identity. We were raised to be really hard workers, and when that's taken away and you can't work, and so I joined this gym, and this group fitness instructor pulled me off the treadmill one day. You could see group fitness from the treadmill, and I was like always watching them, and I was like, "That's so cool," but I'm never doing it. And then she really pulled me off there, and I literally thought I was going to throw up. And she took me to a turbo kick class, and I was literally like, no, I'm good here. And she's like, honey, get over here. You know how they talk in Texas. And I went because I couldn't say no. And I did the back row and, had no clue. I have no coordination. But during that hour class, I was like, this energy, and I kept showing up every day. And like over time, all of a sudden I was at the front row and I just realized like how much confidence I had gotten. I was like obsessed, like 6 days a week. I was at that gym. And, I went from, then same lady said, you should be a group fitness instructor. There's no way I cannot put on a microphone. But I did. I taught turbo kick and it was terrible. I had to quit teaching. So
You could barely go through a checkout line at the grocery store without like being this little dog sitting in the corner not wanting to see anybody or talk to anybody.
Oh, wow. Oh, that just fires me up, actually.
Right.
That shows and just gives me a real life example of like what this business model will do to be able to force pressure, make sure you connect with people. Because Fred, never in a million years would I, granted I didn't know Toni at this time, but I've never thought that of you. You have a very warm, colorful personality, connect with people extremely well. That's how I'd describe you if you weren't here.
Yeah, you wouldn't.
no, I hid behind the shadows.
Wow. Okay. So about what year was this that you were kind of going through this transition?
They 07, 08.
Okay.
And then I became a group fitness instructor. It would have been the fall of 08. I'd lost 50 pounds that year. Interesting enough, when I went back to Canada for the first time, I thought I was the same person, but everybody was like, oh my God, look at what happened. And like, that's when I really realized like fitness, it transforms the physical side of you, but you still have to work on the inside.
Oh, yeah.
And like, that was the first connection I had made. Like I had worked on, and got fit on the outside, but on the inside, I was still that struggling, person that didn't know how to love myself or really pour into myself. And so that's when we went back and I was like, I got to figure this out.
When you say went back, you mean back to Canada?
No, we went home to Canada and then went back to the States.
We didn't move. We just went for
Just for a visit. We used to go, me and the kids used to go for 5 weeks in the summer. We have 4 daughters, 5 grandkids.
That's awesome. Congrats. And all 4 live in Canada.
The oldest only lives in Canada. The other three are down here.
and they got citizenship through me.
Nice.
We did make a mistake though, because of my oldest daughter from my first wife. She could have got citizenship before she turned 18. So now she's over 18. We didn't do it. It's that process where probably 99% of immigrants coming to Canada face, right? It's a struggle.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, appreciate that foundation. Now I'd just love to kind of transition. I mean, we're still a few years before, I guess, you end up launching your Fit Body. I think you said December of 2013 is when you got the paperwork approval.
Yeah.
July of 2014 is when you launched. So kind of let's fill in that gap. What were you up to? And then how did you hear about Fit Body? And really the question is, why did you decide to take this leap of faith and, become an entrepreneur and launch your own business in Fort Worth, Texas?
Yeah, so we were still living outside of Fort Worth at that time. I got certified in 5 group fitness formats, became a personal trainer. Same girl pressured me into that, but really just found a love of helping people. And that's what I did before. I just helped people too. And so that I started to find myself again by being able to pour into people. And so at that time, one of our kids was struggling in school. And the public school system is not the best where we lived. So we ended up making the decision to move into Fort Worth, which was where our house was. It was actually a 45-minute drive. So she was going to go to school there. So we decided to move, but I was still driving back and forth to this other gym because it was a really great community, very similar to what our Fit Bodies have. And it was the best community ever. And, Fred was always on me because it was a drive and,
Because you were living in Weatherford, Texas, is that right?
Peaster, actually. Yes, yeah.
It's about 45 minutes.
Right.
Fort Worth.
Yeah.
At that point, you made the decision you're going to head to Fort Worth, but you're still kind of going back and
Yes.
forth.
And so, Fred was like, you're just driving all this time. You're only training one client, teaching a few classes. And at that time, I was following a good friend that had 2 locations, a Fit Body boot camp in Alberta and Saskatchewan. And so I was following her. And so originally, I just reached out to her and I was like, how do you train your clients in 30 minutes? Because I thought if I could be more efficient, I could help more people. So when I went out there, it wasn't just going out for one client. I could do 30-minute sessions. And, she was like, battling ropes, TRX. And I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And she's like, Google it. So I literally Fit Body Boot Camp. And at that time, there was one in Dallas and Frisco. And I was like, and she's like, go to one. And I was like, well, that's a ways. And so I remember her saying you should open up one. I was like, there's no way I can be a business owner. And
I think that this time.
I think my dove and
You didn't want to.
I didn't like conflict, and I just thought I was a super great employee and great team member. Just give me what to do, head down, I'll get it done. But I was like, there's no way I could like be a boss. And, I can just remember thinking, that's never going to happen. And then I have this ear over here. He's going in my ear, and my friend was literally like, just do an inquiry so you can get the territory locked up, which like I didn't even know what it meant.
Yeah.
And so I
It was just getting off the ground.
Yeah.
yeah,
2013.
that would have been 2013.
Okay.
I remember it because it was in November that I did the inquiry, and then all of a sudden, like all these interviews are
quick.
It happened quick.
Okay.
All these interviews, there was interviews every week, and I just remember getting off every interview, and Fred would be like, "How did you do?" No clue. I don't know if I answered anything right or nothing. It just gave me a bunch of brain fog. I was like, I have no clue, and then it just like I kept advancing to the next interview, and then it was December 26, 2013. Then
You got the news.
yeah, that's when I got the email.
So you put in the express interest, you're Googling it, you put in the interest, you're having a few conversations with headquarters to kind of vet out on both sides. At this point in time, if you remember, what really intrigued you? What was the big kind of pull that you're like, wow, this is interesting, I want to learn more? Because there had to be some sort of like curiosity or interest to learn more to keep you progressing through that process, even though in the grand scheme of things, it happened relatively quick.
Yeah, I can remember one call. I wish I remembered who it was with at FitBody. I remember him asking me, so like, what kind of income do you think, like, what do you want to make out of this? And I can literally remember saying $25,000 a year. Like, I literally remember saying that. And I can remember him saying like, well, if that's like all you really can vision, you're probably not a good fit for our franchise. Like, I can literally remember that. And then I was like trying to backstep to like, well, no. Like, I want to make more money, but I didn't have that belief at that time that I could do that.
Yeah.
You don't think that.
You don't think that, and it's interesting. I mean, you're such a caring, loving person. By the way, to color in some details for our audience, you should be ingrained in this particular moment at the Fit Body world. But if you don't, or you're not, we operate off DISC, which is a human personality assessment, which really gives us a better understanding of how human behavior works. There's 4 behavior patterns, and Toni is a high dove, which is support of the S in the DISC. And really, from that particular profile, and just you as a person, human nature, you're a lover, you're a giver, you're a server. So really, what I'm hearing is that's what really was dragging you in or pulling you into the business. And of course, there's a financial component as well, but that's learned as
Yes. Yeah, it was. And I just, when going through all those interview processes and with Fred, just like, you can do it, babe. And I was like, if we could just help this many people, and like, you don't even have a vision at that point. And, I can remember telling him, well, if we do this, you have to promise to never say, we shouldn't have did this. Because also I have multiple sclerosis, and stress and MS don't mix.
Yeah.
And so
I want to dive into that, actually. Before we do, I want to kind of get your perspective, Fred. What you saw in Toni, it seems to be, and this is my words, not yours, but you saw something even bigger in her than she even saw at that moment in time. So I'm curious what you saw and why that encouragement was there, and good on you. So very impressive.
Well, when you're with somebody as long as we've been together, you start seeing a transition, right? And I knew my job meant so much to me as being a superintendent and running an oil company, right? At that level, I neglected everybody, right? Because 100% of my time went into making this Texas division work, right? So there was days I'd never come home for 2 days because I'd have to be out on an oil rig, troubleshooting problems, stuff like that. So when she started her fitness journey, I just seen a spark, right? Her eyes lit back up, right? It's not like she was unhappy before, but I just seen her friends instill in her, and she started doing all the fitness journey and getting teaching in it. It just changed her life. Like she became just alive.
She knew that clearly, but then you, outside looking in, you see a change. And you're like, hey, listen, this is the direction we need to go. You need to go, Toni.
Right.
This is filling your cup.
100%. Yeah. And I seen the satisfaction she got out of that. And then she did all the group fitness and all that kind of stuff. And I said, you need to work for yourself. And that's where, shout out to Michelle Rogers.
Well, that's awesome. That's a great story, and I think it's so important in your situation. I would say it's unique and also common at the same time. many times franchise partners come in and they watch the location. Sometimes they have the full support. Sometimes their spouse, still retains their line of work. But in this case, it's just been the biggest cheerleader and support system. And the fact that we're here at Elite Training, you're here as well, just speaks volumes. So I'm so proud and grateful for you both.
And she learned, it's her baby. That's her thing. I support it 100%. I try not to dabble into stuff. Sometimes you see a little bit of stuff. Well, I should do this, but I mean, she's had her ups and downs and her successes and her failures, but that's part of life. You have to have that to grow as a person.
Totally.
And I've watched her come out of her shell, like we were just talking. She used to be this dove person, right? That wouldn't. And the first time she still has a deep end. But the first time I seen her talk on stage at Fit Body, I was like, had a tear in my eye, and I'm for video, and I'm like, if anybody knew her prior, like her now, right? Everybody would be like, oh my God, Toni's doing that. So that's
me. That's how I've always known Toni. So
right.
I've always known you as very colorful personality, very engaging, very personal, always reaching out and building relationships and friendships. So to that point, I love this, friends. I'm learning a lot as well.
Yeah, it's very much a people game, and I enjoy coming because I get to make friends outside of my world, where my world's very much kind of like a military style. It's all position, right? So you command all the time, right? So you come here and you meet people on a different level.
Yeah, really good for you both. In terms
very
of
good
perspective, but also connect you.
Right.
And I actually always say, I still am a dove, but I feel like I was a wounded dove before. I got my wings. Yes, it's a great thing. Yes.
My mother's a dove.
It's a great thing.
My wife's a dove, which is great. And dove, that personality style is really great from a connection perspective, putting others first, servant heart leadership, which is, great. To your point, the flip side sometimes can be submissive and passive. Yes. And, that's the challenge that we always work through in terms of different personality styles and human dynamics. But we love that. Well, thank you for sharing. I want to jump into then getting the doors off the ground. But one of my talking points was actually to kind of lean into you having MS. And that's just so admirable for what you've been able to do and overcome is absolutely incredible. Not only even from a business owner, but from a mom and just a person. And of course, launching a business and being successful, for the last 10 years. So let's actually talk a little bit about that if you're up for it. We'd love to just, be able to provide some insight to the audience, a little bit more of your battle with MS and then how that shows up even to this day.
Yeah, so, I got fit moving to the States in 2007 and felt really happy deep down for the first time in my life. And then it was 2011, I kept getting this facial numbness. Didn't even have a doctor in the States really at that time because I had felt so good and so healthy. And so I kept going to urgent care and they just kept treating me with steroids for this.
For the numbness.
For the numbness. And they thought it was Bell's palsy, which is an infection. And probably the fourth time it came back, it was bad. It was ringing in my ears, and the numbness was the roof of my mouth, my nose, my whole top of my head. And I was like, I better see a real doctor. So this was on a Monday. I went to a doctor and she kept me calm, but thinking back, she knew it was serious. So she said, you're healthy, but let's do blood work and get an MRI. So that day I had blood work. The next day I had an MRI. Fred was actually in Oklahoma working at the time. And that was Tuesday. I had the MRI. I drove home from it, which I probably shouldn't have. By Wednesday morning, I could barely stand. It was like I was staggering. My vertigo was so bad. He was away. I said, you're fine, stay away. I had a friend pick up the kids, taking them to school, called the doctor and said, excuse me. I said, are you still thinking about getting me into a specialist because something is really wrong? So at this point, I still thought it was something with my inner ear. So that same Friday, that same week, I had a friend drive me to this neurologist, and it was an emotional day. I can't really remember much about that appointment because I think I went into shock. But she essentially said, you have 41 lesions on your brain. You have multiple sclerosis. And I just remember thinking, as my career in Canada before, I treated end-stage MS patients. So they were using the scooters. They had the tracheotomy. And that's all I could think in that appointment. There's no way that this is my destiny. There's no way that that I have MS and I'm going down that road. But that was the road I was going down. And so I went home and did steroid IV for days, and that year was pretty rough and many low points.
This is 2011.
Yeah.
So this is 2 years before we talked about
Mm-hmm.
your experience. So continue on, and I'm curious on how this all ties in. I'm blown away and admire the strength that you had to keep pushing through. So
Yeah, so I can remember, just feeling not just bad for myself, but bad for Fred. I remember telling him, like, you can leave me. I said, like, you didn't sign up for this. Because, like, my whole identity was crushed. I couldn't be that mom. I couldn't be the wife. I just, like, laid on the couch for weeks.
Because that was your transition from 2007. Your identity was your career, etc.
Yeah.
Then that changed to be the super wife, super mom. Mm-hmm. At that point, in a minute, then your identity changes again.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter called, and she said, my teenage daughter was in high school at the time. She said, Dad, you need to come home. Mom can't even tie her shoes. Like, she's driving the kids to school thinking it's fine. I just got a little infection. I can do it. And she was debilitated to the
like
point.
Super mom in her head.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Keeping up.
And she refused to take it, right? But then I think when the diagnosis come, it's a gut check for everybody, right? And it was your first, you want to give up.
Mm-hmm. You just want to give up, and it's just so unbelievable. And I just felt like, I definitely remember back thinking the victim mentality, like, why is this happening to me? Like, it's not fair.
Well, technology, though, I think, granted, to be successful long term, you need to transition from that. But I think it's just human nature.
Yes.
And all, you need to go through that victim mindset stage before you transition.
Yeah.
So to give yourself some space there.
Yeah, and so I don't know how. I wish I would have journaled back then, because I laid on the couch and just barely existed at that point. Whenever I have to go on these steroids, I get well over 200 pounds again. So I just and I don't sleep. It's not very fun. But I don't remember the pivotal point. But when you get a sickness, people try to reach out to help, and all the Facebook messages was just overwhelming. But I remember one of my trainers that I used to work with at the local gym, he reached out and he said, like, well, you should do the Whole30 with us. There's a group at the gym doing it. It's like a clean eating program. I'd never heard of it. And I shut it down. I was like, just kind of over it. And then, I just thought on it for a little while. And then I was like, what do I have to lose? And my supportive husband, kids, we all did it. And Whole30, it was terrible back then.
We all did it together.
Yes.
On you, Fred, and family. Holy smoke.
And it was terrible. You basically, there was not the stuff we have now to do the Whole30. But literally, I remember it was about halfway through. So Whole30 is a 30-day program, clean eating, and it was halfway through. And I can remember waking up having hope. And like when you lose, and that
30 days.
Right.
And like that's when I got MS. I lost hope. Like just hope of my life and what I was going to be able to do, and being able to eat like that. And I'd been on. I was doing injections 3 times a week at that point for my MS. And, the doctors promised you're going to get better. Well, I wasn't getting better. It was just like going on, and it gets scary. And when we did the Whole30, I was like, oh my God, like eating like that for 30 days helped me more than the 6 months prior to all of these injections. And I followed Whole30 for probably 2 years, like on it. And it just, it gave me so much hope, because I was able to return to teaching group fitness, getting back in the gym. And like, that was such a pivotal point, because that's when I really realized that fitness was what I was meant to do to change people's lives.
Really?
Because when I couldn't walk, and then when all those people, all of the members at the gym seen me come back from that.
You could walk because of the MS.
Yeah.
So in some way, Toni, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but going through your own transformation, but then having MS and being debilitated, but then focusing on your fitness and seeing the big transformation, would it be fair to say that really lit your fire even more?
Yes. It really.
This is my leadership philosophy: turning adversity into your advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what you've done.
Yeah. And like people will ask me about MS, and I always say I don't ever wish MS on anybody else, but I feel like it was definitely a pivotal point in who I am today and how I've been able to even have a business.
Really?
Because it taught me things are going to suck. But if you can just get up every day, and when I was able to get up and get on that stage and teach group fitness for the first time, and it wasn't even about me, but it kind of was. But when I looked out into my members' eyes, And I could just see the hope in their eyes. And, so many people would tell me, like, if you can do this, like, I can do anything. And so it's just like, it's given me like empathy for people. Like, you go through really hard things and you can be down, but you can't stay down. Like, you have to get up. You have to put one foot in front of the other, no matter how hard it is.
Respect. That is unbelievable. That's unbelievable. Well, thank you for sharing. I wanted to take some space because I know that's a big part of the story and a big part of your journey, not only from a business, but for life as well. All right, so kind of walk us through now as we transition. I'm sure we'll kind of go in and out, but fast forward a couple of years and we're back into 2013. You're going through this process. Then you ultimately get approved. You pass the vetting, and off to the races you go. And certainly just want to give a high level here, but 2014, I want to say July, you launched. What was that experience like? If you can remember back on 30,000 foot view, a couple of the, I guess, probably high moments and then probably a couple of low moments, which in business and life, we go through a lot, including MS. So
all of 2014 was interesting. Like, to think back, I was telling him, how am I supposed to remember 10 years ago? But it's the things you remember, like even from getting approved. I can even remember my family telling me, like, you can't have a fit body, you have MS. How are you going to have a business? Well, that fired me up even more. And going through that, all of that, I actually got a collapsed lung in there too, from an injection that...
Throw in that for good measure.
We're right here.
Because we're literally, we started to... look for buildings, for spaces, and then I get this collapsed lung, and I was like, okay, well, the opening is going to be bumped back a little farther, but we made it through that.
There you go.
We made it through that, and, we finally secured a space, and it was intense, because it was so hard to find a space, because I had in my mind that we were only going to have to pay this much money, and then you start looking, and you're like, oh, we're going to pay a little bit more money, but it just worked out. We actually found a space that used to be a gym. And I can literally remember my business coach at the time saying, you can't open July 1st. You can't open in the summer. And I remember Fred saying, you have the space, you're opening in the summer. And I also remember, this is a thing I think so many people need to hear in business is, you keep pushing it off because it's so scary. And it's like having a baby for the first time. You're never going to be ready for it. You just have to open the doors, and like you'll figure stuff out as you go through. And like someone had told us that, and it is 100% true. We opened the doors with like no members. We had 5 free people.
Putting the floors in, or you're like overwhelmed with everything. Right?
It's interesting, and thankfully, the last 10 years we've had a ton of infrastructure support. This is the Wild West, figuratively, and for you, and literally. Because I joined as well around that same time. But this all to say, I think it's a good learning lesson in life and business that you can't see all the stairs. You just need to take the next step. And it's interesting, our on-site experience, which is a new training that we launched in 2021 for our owners to give them a strong foundation. They come out, they have 2 locations, one in Michigan, one in California, and gives them, all of our new franchise partners, that inside look of on operations and how to run a business. That in mind, can you provide training on a business that for over 4 days? Absolutely not. There's no way you're going to learn an entire business model in that period of time. It's going to give you a foundation, and we're there for support. But to your point, you're going to still have to figure it as you go. And I think that's a good message and a lesson that I'm extrapolating from you.
And we look at each other now, and we think, oh, look at Fit Body now. They have the templates. Oh, you guys did all the templates, right? You guys did all the training. So it's, as a Fit Body franchisee and partner, coming in now is way different than it was back then.
A little bit better than 10 years ago. For sure.
All right.
So
You and Tatiana were actually the first owners that I ever that talked to me.
Well, fond memories. I don't necessarily remember that specific conversation, but you've been a big part of my Fit Body journey, and I mean that with every fiber of my being. So, all right. Well, I want to kind of finish off with just some other insight questions in terms of how the journey has been. We look back, not necessarily 10 years ago, but just over the course of 10 years, 30,000 foot view. What would you say is probably one of the biggest blessings of Fit Body ownership? And then what would you say, being real as well, was one of the biggest challenges. So I'm going to start there, and then I want to take a little bit more time to ask a little bit more questions about your working dynamic, but why don't we start there?
I really think the blessing with being a Fit Body Bootcamp owner is it's the people that get to be in your life. Like, not even from a client, but from a team, from the franchisee. Like, it's community everywhere. And, we moved and uprooted from a different country, and, we had some community at our other gym, but it was really like when we opened up our Fit Body, the community that we have within there and the team, like, they are really family. And then just sometimes when I hear the word franchise, I can see people respond, and I always explain no, because it is so different. You're like the first person I met, you're our CEO, and you just have the bonds and friendships and the interactions that fill my life. So you get to fill people's cup every day, but at the same time, you're also getting your cup filled. And it's just such a great, I just can't even imagine the Toni before Fit Body, or if that wouldn't have ever came into my life.
Holy smokes. And hearing from you, Fred, that's a different lady than I know. That's a different lady that I'm looking at right now that I've known for the last 10 years.
Right.
Which is absolutely incredible. On the flip side, what about the challenge?
There's many challenges. Just getting your team together, getting everything moving, and definitely we have great resources now. I'm part of Mastermind. I can literally remember this Mastermind we went to. I wish I remembered exactly which year, but I'd probably guess 2018. They spoke on leadership, and I was literally like, this is the key I've been missing the whole time. I'd never thought about leadership before. And so I really feel like that was a struggle, and it still is. Always
Fitness. You can be good today, but at the end of the day, you need to learn and grow, because just because you're good today doesn't mean you're going to be good tomorrow without intentionality.
Yeah. And so when I think back to the leadership in the early days, I'm like, oh my gosh, no wonder X, Y, and Z went wrong. And, you can point the finger at, it was because we had this team or didn't have this team, but it all came back to me. I was not leading, I was not setting expectations, I didn't have accountability in place, and it still is an ongoing thing. So I really feel realizing, oh, you are a leader, because I just thought, let's open up a gym, change lives, I'm going to coach all the sessions. And then when you realize, it doesn't work that way. You need a team of warriors with you to make that impact.
You have to step into that leadership role. And the good news is leadership is a skill, so you can learn it.
Yes.
I have a very similar, experience from my journey as well. It took me probably about 2 years in before I realized, oh man, I need to focus more on developing myself. Yeah, it's a leadership perspective. So a lot of learning lessons for sure, a lot of growth.
Yes.
Huge value. All right, last kind of overarching, topic of conversation I wanted to glean from you both is just some insights and some general recommendations to our audience. Like I said, not all the time, but many times, franchise partners, sync up with their spouses, and I feel like you have just the perfect dynamic. I mean, one time-tested relationship, 27 years married, 35 years together, absolutely incredible. There's so much respect for that. Fred, you've had a very successful career, which has provided a lot of value to your family, but also too, you've also encouraged and supported. And I think that's just so incredible. So how is that dynamic? What was that dynamic like when you first launched the business? And then what's that dynamic today? Just giving insight to our audience so that way they have a template. Oh, this is how it could potentially work if I launch a business, and this spouse is ready to go, and then I have some support in the back end.
It's like anything in life. You get out what you put in, right? I mean, right now, everybody seems to be in this disposable everything life, right? Marriages, everything. You have to be committed to each other. You have to put in the effort. You have to put in the time. And they have to be the number one person in your life, right? You can't be tied to anything else. You're going through life together.
Yeah.
And it has to be a journey together. And you have your ups and your downs, just like anything else. So
marriage and business and life.
Right.
Well, you, Toni, what's your perspective on that?
And it's definitely I've met people that have not had the support, and it just makes a difference because, in the early days it was long hours, long grind. And, not just my husband, Fred, but all of our kids. They just supported us. When we opened, we had 2 young teenagers. And I've heard other owners say their kids, Mom, all you do is work. But we never got that from our kids. They just saw, Mom's an inspiration.
Yeah.
And I remember, we're getting MS that forced them to grow up. They had to start doing their laundry young, but I would come home and they'd have coffee made in the early days. And Fred still to this day has a tub run and supper made for me if I'm late at the gym.
Good guy.
But it's just it's not just your spouse. I feel like if your whole family is on board with you, it just makes it a little bit easier.
And you together.
Well, I think to your point, and you mentioned community earlier, and having a community, at your business and at home as well. And then to both your credit, when this business model, you're leading through inspiration. You're leading as an example. When 80% of our country here in the States is either obese or overweight or has massive health issues, when you're starting a community, when you're taking chances, when you're helping someone with the most important thing you could possibly help them with, which is their health and fitness.
Yeah.
Of course your kids are going to be like, hey, this is awesome, considering you're a great person and a great mom and a great dad. So that says a lot. Well,
especially the way you guys help people, right? It's your guys' business. But what about the one person that was thinking, oh, maybe I shouldn't be here anymore? Or that one time you come to the gym, you make that connection, right? With the community we have, I'm sure behind the scenes, we don't know, she doesn't know, you don't know, whose lives you really saved.
Oh, totally. And I always say this, everyone's fighting an invisible battle. And, many times you don't know that, right? But, be able to support, build community, and develop relationships and help people. That's what this world's all about. Friends, this has been awesome. I guess to finish off on a, inspirational note, when you look back at your journey within FitBody, we're shooting this in 2024, so it's been over a decade in running. What would you say has been the biggest source of fulfillment or impact that FitBody has had in your lives?
It's been really life-changing. I was always a good person, don't get me wrong, but just, I never had, the foundation I needed to really, really make an impact and to really... I used to struggle with anxiety, and I couldn't make decisions for the life of me. Bezos, I remember him, you gotta just make decisions about where you're gonna eat. And, it's just, made me be such an action taker, the personal growth I've had with FitBody, it's, I wouldn't be I didn't even know. I remember telling Fred, this is no word of a lie, if I never read another book in my life, I'll be content. What? I can't even believe it.
That's the person she used to be.
This is before I opened FitBody.
That blows my mind.
I know.
Knowing that blows my mind.
And so it's just goes to show I really feel when we started focusing on leadership, that's when I had realized before you needed to do the inner work, but I didn't feel I didn't even know what a podcast was. I didn't feel I had tools then to do it. And so just being able to, when I look back who I was still the dove, loved helping people. But now it's just I'm more resilient. I'm more dedicated. I can take action. I live in faith way more. I used to live in fear. I would just run that. My mind would just do that fearful circle. But, being a part of FitBody and going through everything, you just realize it's going to work out. You're going to have faith. You just got to, no matter if it's a physical struggle, business struggle, staff, everything that we've been through, the economy, you just got to keep your chin up. Everything.
And the FitBody family's always there. She can pick up the phone day or night and call somebody in North America and the world at one time, and someone's going to pick up and help you. So you have a family, you have a core group of people that genuinely care. They don't want to see you slip. So FitBody people are there all the time.
I feel the same way. And I guess on that note, as we wind down our conversation, I want to express my sincere gratitude, not only for both of you for being here and sitting down and having a conversation, inspiring other people, but for being friends for over a decade, for being in the trenches together, for connecting and growing and being on this journey together. I have such mad respect, appreciation, love for you both, and it's been inspiring to not only to lead you but be with you on that journey. And that's how I look at you both. And so grateful, and I want to acknowledge you. You guys are huge parts of the Fit Body brand and huge parts of my story as well.
Thank you.
You're gonna rock it.
Same back to you, Bryce. That's
Yeah, for sure.
The franchise and all of you guys are just my best friends. I've been with them in the franchise. It's neat to be able to say that.
Well, thank you, and feeling is mutual. So, my friends, I know you got a ton out of this value out of this episode. My one ask, give this a like and share this with someone. That way we inspire others. Toni, thank you so much. And remember that no one is coming to save you. You must save yourself, and the time is now. We'll see you in the next episode.